Alrighty, g'day guys. So, if you're wondering what the hell is going on right now, let me give you a real quick explanation and then we'll dive into the meat of it. So this is the last game of the previous LIHL season in terms of the elo being counted. And red against yellow were the two captains, and they picked from basically all the players that were around at the time and were like, oh yeah, I want to play. So yeah, just some quick stats. I'll just tab out to Discord to get those. Yellow was 1704, yellow. Red was 1702. That was top 1 and top 2. And then, yeah, they had this game. It's good to see there was no, like, elo managing refusing to play in the last couple of hours or whatever of the season. They sort of, played a game, and whoever won the season, which is always a good way to do it. But yeah, so I've got that game here. There's actually a couple of different people were like, oh, you should check this game out. It was a good one. So yeah, thanks to them, of course, for recommending it, because I had a quick watch of this game first, and like, yeah, it was pretty good. I'm happy with it. Wouldn't upload like a super boring game if it were one, but it's not. So anyway, let's get into it. We're gonna take it off Red's perspective, because I watched the replay in his perspective and he kept moving his profit into mid, so the camera kept jumping around. It's fucking annoying. Anyway, going through the rolls really quick. We've got LED start. We've got a reroll, so we'll come back. EA start. We have another reroll, and we're just going to play engineers. Turn off the fog of war, because, yep. We have Lubber. And note that he keeps the peasants initially. We have a zombie. Note that he keeps the cults initially. Then we have 2-drop spiders into reroll. We dropped a ghoul and rerolled into the LOD here. So playing Wendigo with spider. Alright, so I'll go through the rolls real quick again. And just, give my consensus on them. LOD just makes sense here. It's good. You can push, you can overbuild. Would rather overbuild with this, but it's just good roll. We end up rerolling into Egg Militia. Egg Militia makes sense. Witch Shock is quite nice for it as well. But yeah, you can overbuild with that, or you can YOLO with it successfully if you choose to do that as well. A little awkward on 3, of course, as it always is. He gets a nice 3-0 start. EA plays no tier 1, which is reasonable with the LOD. You can see that the engineer, in a second, late sells to go 4-0. Again, carry roll LOD, they'll just feed him. Makes sense. Right, another couple of things, and we'll pause it real quick. So you can see he sold the 2 militias, and you might think, why? Militia is just really good if you want to overbuild 7, and it kind of makes sense to overbuild some 7 with that roll. But we've got this roll, and note that he sold the 2 cults, so between cult and spear militia, I would prefer spear militia, but cult is cheaper, which is probably like the biggest upside of it compared to spear militia. It's just a cheaper unit, so you can get more push with it if you choose to do that. But I agree with selling the cults, and if you choose to overbuild with this, which you probably almost always do, and going for spear militia over the rider. But yeah, you can see around me that roll makes sense. And then this is the one I would question. It's like, how do you get a good YOLO when you have a Wendigo, right? Because if you wanted to overbuild, you would play Ig, or like Slave even, with 2 spiders somehow, I don't know. Like, yeah, you can Tok Maverick would be an option. Not great push, but it is an option. But for me, I would be like, how can I actually YOLO when I have a Wendigo now? Like, can I do it? I am, honestly, I would keep the spiders, but I feel like it's a bloody prisoner game, which is not something I feel very often. I don't like prisoner in general, but I think with rat, and with maybe one of the spiders, I think you could have a decent game. Like a Maverick on 5 and then rats and the spiders. So I would do some sort of YOLO that way personally, because I feel like this Wendigo makes it very difficult to hold 5 efficiently, even though it's not a bad unit in general. But yeah, getting back to my point about selling the peasants, see that like Privateer is a kind of meh overbuild. Like, while his ads are really good, they're not that great for 7. And you know that Orange is going to want to overbuild. You know that Rum's going to want to overbuild because it's Rum, and that's like, Yikes, that's all he does. No, I'm just fucking with you. But again, this roll's like really awkward if it doesn't overbuild, so it probably does most of the time. So I think it makes sense to kill to sell the peasants, because they're only better if you actually overbuild, not if you are pushing more. So we'll speed through a little more level, because I've talked for a bit there, of course. Nothing too exciting happening. You can see that EA goes instant 4-0, and East team starts with King, which I assume is an attack. Wee. Crazy. Yes, indeed an attack. So looking here, we go Witch Dock and second egg sack. I mean, makes sense. Nothing wrong with that. It's good for 7. And good early if you want to push it more. So Geomancer, 2 riders. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Rider is too expensive to go 2 riders with 2-0 now, so just getting the clock on 3 is like reasonable. Clock is okay. It's tanky at least. 250 engineers, like, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's standard except for the 4-0. I'm assuming that he knew they were sending 3 like early, and that's why I did the fast 4-0, but we'll check back on what happens there in a sec. Went Militia with 3-0, which is fine. Militia's good on 2, and then second zombie 3. Undead, of course. Geomancer, so both lords going Geomancer plus tier 1 into Glock on 3, and then added a couple of rats. And all of those, I would say, like, fine. See here, we have a bit of chat from West. They plan to go 3. So he doesn't get the Blood Orc, doesn't panic, and doesn't send a Furb like an absolute mutt, so that's good. But does end up having to go like small Necro here, which is not what you'd ideally want. See, East does a bit more King. So all the builds fairly expected. Now, take a look at this real quick. Double non-weapon Militia with the Witch Dock, a couple of peasants. Remember, if you've watched my channel for a bit, you'll know that Militia on 3, really bad. Every time I played this unit early, I think I end up mentioning that it's really bad on 3. Because it doesn't attack particularly quickly, and it misses the one-shot by like not that much damage, so its increment is really inefficient on 3, and then medium armor, so it's fragile with only 535 HP. It's basically like, think of something that would be terrible on 3, and you kind of just end up with this unit. But yeah. So, West ends up sending Pardon, 3 Blood Ox, 1 Furb lands here, but every build on East is actually really strong on 3, like their units are just good on 3. No one's risking, and you can see that Militia, bad on 3. The team that doesn't send ends up leaking, or the team that sent ends up leaking, and then there are just no leaks against the send from East. So, good spot for East, of course. Not only do they eat a bunch of opponent's wood, get a bit of gold, they completely deny scout, which is very, very good for them. So you can see, because West didn't see the scout at all, they have no idea what kind of units the East has, except presumably units that are decent on 3. So they're scared to push too much, and you can see both blue and red decide to stay a bit low. In terms of the rest of the builds, everything's pretty normal. Orange is going to build up, yellow is pushing, Rummy is overbuilding as expected, and we'll check in with his lane on 5 because I missed what he actually ended up doing in the replay. See 2 lanes leaking here from West. Don't know why it was so hard to remember West. One of them's the engineer, and one of them was the EA who had the small Necro. Small Necro, not good on 4. But honestly, he didn't leak too much, so it's not too bad. See, definitely prioritizing the push still, going single small archer. So like, as janky as this looks, it's honestly not too bad, because he only leaked a couple of creeps on 4, and they'd been scouted already, so it's kind of whatever to leak. It's not like the scout is hugely impactful in this game. And then ends up with 525 value on 5, which is totally fine. Engineer's going to leak a lot, of course, and then these guys are just basically full building on 5. Yeah, third undead for yellow. Double spear for orange, double spear really good. Okay, just one Nightcrawler with 570. Is that rat maxed as well? Rat is maxed, okay. So 570. Definitely, like, if it would hold, it's pretty good. Spoiler alert, no. I think I would upgrade this spider if I was him as well, but maybe it's worse on 6. So, I mean, I would upgrade the outside one to try and get more damage share on it. Because if the small spider gets, like, the small spider is really fragile basically, but it wouldn't end up mattering here. It's just, yeah, leaking. Not huge, like not the worst thing ever. But, yeah, a little bit painful, and that would be my, like, critique of starting with the Wendigo is, like, what are you doing, 5? And then gives the other team a scout here, which is not the worst. I have no idea if they scouted King at this point. It probably doesn't matter that much. In terms of spells, West ends up with Thornmail, East ends up with Stomp. So, yeah, it definitely limits West's ability to send 7 with that Thornmail there, even though they have 2 lanes staying low. Yeah, we'll play out through 6, check in with all the lanes. See, Rami's just going extra Monk. I believe he goes Zerka on 7, which is good on 7. He's going to have second Butcher, which basically says, like, you're forced to Kobold. Maybe he does double Militia, actually. I think he does second Butcher, though. I would do second Butcher. And yeah, obviously East is talking about if they send anything or just skip. I think with Thornmail, like, not really much of a scout. Decent holds, but very low send if they did send. I think just skipping makes a lot of sense, which is what they end up doing. You can see East goes for the send. They send with Blood Orc, which is sensible. They've seen LOD, so like presumably Hades on 7. And they see the Monk ad for it now as well. And they also see the Spear Militia. All of these things are vulnerable to Blood Orc, being like medium armor. So it makes a lot of sense. Oh no, I actually went third Monk. Okay, I would do 1 Berserker here rather than third Monk. That way you have Hades 2 Berserker on 10. Rather than like Hades Berserker 2 Monks or something, but whatever. Don't expect too much from Rum. He actually ends up going Spear Militia and just 1 Butcher. I don't know, I kind of prefer second Butcher, I think, but obviously against no send it doesn't matter. And we'll turn the speed down a little bit. You can see that the Blood Orc actually got a little bit unlucky not to kill the LOD. Blood Orc wasting all its damage on it. See, just a little more send would have broken blue. Red ended up having a pretty good mid. Needed just slightly more send to break blue. This send wasn't bad, of course, but as you know, it's just those little things. Blue leaking there would be definitely a big deal if he manages to leak even just a few late sends against the Thornmail King. But as it stands with 2 mid and only 36 leaks to King, I believe West is able to keep all their heals, which is good for them, of course. Like, they're relatively happy with how this turned out. Both of their lanes that tried to hold were successful in holding. They keep all their heals, and they're pretty strong on 10 now. So yeah, and they can, like, unless they want to go for some kind of all-in, which doesn't make any sense, like all-in 12-13, which doesn't make any sense versus what they've seen on East, they'll just send 10 and have a reasonable amount of wood to do just that. So yeah, continue it because not that much interesting happens from here. You can see like early Ghost, definitely like lack of EAs on purple ends up being a little painful for him. It doesn't go horribly, but it's alright. You can see blue talking about doing alphas. I would honestly just do Spear Militia with light armor. I think alpha is just like, I don't think it's good. I would rather have Spear Militia. I would also honestly think about an apparition, which sounds really stupid, but I think it's like kind of okay in this spot, even though it's a weird unit. But yeah, you can see a lot of leaks from the right hand side of Team West, and a lot of leaks from East as well, to be honest. So it really is just 2 stronger lanes on each team, orange and green for East, red and blue for West. But of course, relying on Red Rum, is Team East, and well, we'll see how it goes for them. Yeah, so kick this. Oops, sorry about that. Kick the speed up a little bit here. Just have a look at some of the builds. He's saving for a Hades, and we'll just add whatever. And see, we do end up going alphas. I don't like the placement either, I'll be honest. I'm being a bit critical, but 325 range, 400 range, and these things just walk forwards, and also 300 range. But like decent chance these things just walk in front of the egg sacs, which then might cause the militia to walk in front of the egg sacs. So I really am not a fan of building the unit at all, but if I was going to build it, I think I would build them over to this side. And at least like try and get the bosses moving through the egg sacs that way, and like maybe one of them goes on the alpha, and that's okay. I'm not a big fan of what's been done here. It's not horrendous, but I don't like it very much. Yeah, you can see around with Hades and 3 monks here. So this is what I talked about on 7, why I would definitely go for the Berserker. Like, reason number 1 is Berserker gives you more damage than an extra monk on 7. It's squishier. Like, it's less HP overall. But it gives you more damage, which I think Hades appreciates, because that's generally, like, the criticism you can make of Hades. Building for 7 especially, is that you tend to lack a bit of damage. So I like going for the more damage-heavy option of the Berserker, and then ending up with 2 monks and 1 Berserker feels like shit compared to ending up with 2 Berserkers and no monk, in my opinion. So that is why when I play Lord Monk, I really prioritize actually upgrading a Berserker on 7, because I think it's better on 7, but if you wanted to say like it's a little bit worse, I could believe it. But it's so much better on 10 not having these monks. Like, monk isn't garbage on 10, but it doesn't really do much. Like, it's just a whatever tanky unit that doesn't do much damage. And again, you look at his lane and it's like, where's your damage? Zerka does okay damage when Zerka does pretty good damage when it gets low. But honestly, it's like best damage unit is like this Ice Troll, maybe. In terms of units that are like designed to deal damage rather than be tanky. So it's pretty glaring lack of damage, so we'll watch his lane here, because like this looks really solid. 3 Butcher with 3 Spear Militia, a couple of 2-1s, blocker, light armor on the Spear Militia, really like that. I will say a bit of a criticism from Red here, so build looks pretty fine to me in general. He dropped something, a monk, or I don't remember exactly, he dropped something, rerolled into this. I believe he dropped a monk, and then rerolled into this, and ended up with Machine Turret, Young Witch Doctor. I really don't value okay, Young Witch Doctor I think is an extremely good unit, but on 10, it's really not as good, because all the damage comes in like big bursts, focused on 3 different targets, right? Because all of the stats on that wave are loaded into 3 different bosses, right? So how effective is the regen aura going to be? Well, it's not like you have a bunch of units that are like evenly sharing damage. It's like 3 of them are going to be getting fucking murdered, and the rest of them are going to be healthy. So really, like, don't rate building the Witch Dock here. If I was him, I would have sold both of these, just kicked off, like sold this cult here, and then just built the monk, right? If he wants to keep double blocker, and that's understandable, double blocker is good. I know I just went on saying that like monk isn't that great, blah blah blah, and that's true, but I also just think like Witch Dock on 10 is really whatever. Pretty sure you're always happy with this role as well, to have 2 Berserkers come mid-game. I don't think you're ever sad about having 2 Berserkers, so I would do that a little bit differently. Granted, this isn't terrible, but I do think the monk would be better. Then, yeah, I mean, same criticism with this tribesman. I don't mind the back one. I don't like this one all that much. But yeah, let's go ahead and watch Rami's lane, because I think that's the most interesting one. With this, we'll kick down the speed. With a slightly smaller send on from east, the west lanes are both able to do fairly well. Yeah. You see, Like, it looks okay at the moment. He's able to kill the wolf, which is good. But the monk's just getting a little bit murdered. Focus is decent on the first boss from the berserker, and you can see it stacking up damage. But then it's just like, since the monks got killed, it just really runs out of damage and isn't even able to kill the second boss and ends up stuck 7-2. So that's just really a punish for the lack of damage. Orange goes mid, so good for him. But I think the level 7 is like really punished him here. Anyway, we'll fast forward a little bit. You can see that East eats like, or West eats nothing. East eats nothing as well because this boss was so late. You know, there's a heal or two is lost here. Looks like East loses 2 heals. Yeah, East loses 2 heals and most of their bank. So that's actually quite bad for them. 2 heals behind is one thing, but burning through most of their bank is quite painful. So I'd say that East is pretty noticeably behind as well, especially with their 7-2 stock is pretty rough. Does get the Troll Champion for Arena, which, I mean, it makes sense for sure. They want the Arena win. And we'll see if they manage to get it. I don't actually remember who wins Arena. But yeah, Pink staying just 7-6 to start setting up Tox. It makes a lot of sense. Again, behind 2 heals, you need like to actually do well. Nah, West wins the Arena, so Rami gets stuck and can't push 4. I have no idea if he pushes 4 during 11. I think he does. But it's, yeah, it's pretty rough for sure. So, yeah, this is fucking why. Because he keeps, oh, will it do it even if I'm focused on him? God, that's annoying. Yeah, so if the camera just shanks to that, there's nothing I can do about it, sorry. Anyway, reroll into Butcher Highball, and that's absolutely nuts in this spot. So if you think about it, right? If we look at the push, it's pretty comparable, like 4-4-6-5 versus 4-3-6-5. So like 1 jack push advantage for West, but the push advantage is pretty minor. What's not minor is the bank advantage. So 800, 750, 900, 1300, right? Against 900, 800, 1k, 450. Yikes. So West has a pretty solid bank advantage with +2 heals, right? And that basically means that as long as East can't straight up survive 15 and like outhold West, which is why it makes sense for Pink to just be 7-6 building and get Tox this game, by the way. But as long as East can't straight up like survive West's end, they really shouldn't be able to win a race 15, like ever. Right, so West should be really comfortable just building like, okay, we can Annie 14, like Butcher Highborn is totally sweet on blue, doesn't need to mid 15, can just be big mid 14 and leaking slow 15. Yeah, he's just like going Hades, which is fine. Hades goes to EAs, like will do quite well on 14. He's Lakers or whatever, do quite well on 14, like tons 15. Red can do okay 15 with the bronze bids, but realistically with 50 income and like good value, but not insane value and 50 income, realistically it's going to be another case like mid 14 doing some damage 15, but whatever. So East needs to actually be confident that they have 15 holders, like lanes that will actually go mid versus a bigger send than they can send, in order to try and successfully race 15. And even then, it's hard to kill 4 heals Thorn if there's like a fast Fire Lord to the King and maybe like 2 lanes clearing a lot. So it's an uphill battle for East here for sure, around 15. So they really need to either find actual mids 15 or try and opt out with, yeah, see the camera just fucking shanks. God, that's annoying. But yeah, there's literally nothing I can do. I thought changing it to an obs will help somehow. I don't know. All the white names are observers, by the way, so there's a lot of people watching this. Yeah, fucking. It doesn't help, so sorry about that. There's nothing I can do. Yeah, so East needs to either look to just undercut and opt out of the 15 race by sending either 13 or 14. Realistically, with their lack of bank due to needing to up so much on 10, realistically 13 is just not an option, so they kind of need to look for 14. It's, feels bad, but it's just what they have to do. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense for them, of course. And then West can be pretty comfortable and just be like, look, we're not going to die 14 because we have 4 heals and at least 2 lanes, probably 3 lanes doing like pretty well. I'd say I would call like red and blue potential mid 14. And then 15, it's like, how do we ever lose the race when we send more with 2 more heals? And like, they're seeing scouts each level, they're like, who's mid? Probably no one. Like, maybe orange with like butchers if he rerolled auras, but as you can see, he didn't reroll into auras or into damage on 15. So with auras or damage on 15, so auras obviously being what they are, and then damage being things like Warlock, even things that are normally not that great, like Revenant. With such a tanky frontline, Revenant can still do well. But yeah, just wasn't able to find it. So it basically means that East is forced to go 14, which they... fuck off. God, annoying camera. See, it's very irritating. Yeah, basically means that East is forced to go 14, even though their send isn't particularly good. It's just what they had to do. Oh yeah, Remy did push them 4, by the way. It's just like, whatever. I mean, makes sense. You can see send is currently 75-20, 3, 6, and 8. So it'll be like 9k send, which is quite small against 3200 value times 2. What an odd butcher placement, actually. Maybe it's good, I don't know. Just looks a bit weird. Yeah, you can see like one Bronzebeard, 3 Zerkers, and then, yeah, there is a send. Did they reach 9k? Yeah, just reached 9k. And then 2900 of Hades EA Ghost. So, call from West at the moment is like, I mean, I'm sure they expected this send, like, at least a reasonable amount. So yeah, call from West at the moment is just 17. See, blue is doing pretty well. Red, same story. Doing pretty well. Looks like the values aren't super high, so no one's actually able to kill the maidens. But with 4 heals and 3 lanes clearing, they're pretty comfortable. Yeah, I mean, they're just pretty comfortable, right? They're not going to die to this. They could probably keep it at 1 heal if they wanted to absolutely max their regen, as the camera shanks again. But yeah, they just, do some king. They're super chilled about this. As I said, I'm sure they expected this send, because how does East win 15? Right, without god rerolls, and they just didn't get said god rerolls. But you see West actually changes their call to just 15 because, they didn't need much king or whatever. Which we'll see how that goes for them. And, like, spoiler alert. There's still a bit of time left, so maybe it's quite a long level 15. Alright. We end up rerolling, get Mutant and Tempest. Mutant is, like, the better unit, generally. So at this point, it's worth saying, at this point, East is expecting 17, by the way, because, like, that's just what you do. You expect a 17 send now, because that's the most likely send, realistically. You can see Pink with just 7-6 did end up reaching 3 tox here. We have 3800 value on orange, and then like 3700 on yellow and green, even though they don't have direct anti-15. Do they really need it? To actually hold, yes, you can see it's like not expected send, right? Didn't even juice the mutant, and obviously if you expected 15 you go Slenderbird, right? So like orange, just with like good value, and then Butchers being very good frontline unit, is able to fully clear the centaurs and kill 1 Kraken, both Krakens. Kill both Krakens, right? See, yellow killing all creeps. Rummy doing something, killing all the creeps. And then 3 Tok, leaking not much, and leaking really fast and dropping his Fire Lord to the king. He also got a Warlock. I don't know if it's the only Warlock, but it's good to snipe that early. So you can see that East is actually really comfortable here, because they fully assassinate 25% of the Sens just from pink leaking so quickly compared to the rest of the team. And then Orange killed some Sens as well. So you can see that East ends up not even losing a heal to this. So they're back in a decent spot. Probably still fair to say that... I mean, at this point you would really say that East is ahead. But it's definitely not over. So next send is like 20-21, can kind of go either way. But the game is not super fat, so probably thinking more like 20. Depends on potentially leaks from any line as well. If I were in this game, obviously I know what happens, so I get to sound really smart. But if I were in this game, I would probably be thinking like, if there's any leak, it's 20. If there's no leaks, I'm thinking it's more 21. And of course I may not be correct, right, in the actual game. But that's where my head would be at. So in terms of what people are building, Yellow, I mean, he's still on his second reroll from level 1, but it's like Druid PD is just primo any 20. So he's happy going for that, and Druid's a decent damage dealer, 21. Looks like Orange going for some Thunderbirds here. Maybe doesn't want to use the... I think he's on... I don't know if he's on 50 or 100. I think he's on 100 now. Yeah, he's on 100. Doesn't seem to want to use it, so happy enough going Thunderbirds. And that's... bit interesting. I don't like Thunderbird for 20 very much. I would probably just take the 100 and try and find something better. It's a bit hard to say. You can see Rummy, he's got Butcher. But again, like, where's your damage? Your damage is like... Oh wait, Ice Troll Aura doesn't work on 20, so your damage is like non-existent. Even though Butcher again is good for online. And you can see Leak on 17, so... from both teams, actually very slow from West. Very slow leaks. So I would be thinking, yeah, it's probably 20 game at this point. Check back in with what West is building as well. So we got more Bronzebeards coming in for Red. Looks like he dropped rerolled and then just got like basically crap. At this point I would be thinking like, yeah, it's probably like 3 Bronzebeard, last Berserker, and then just like Melee Eye and Spam Pierce. Maybe get like a Blacksmith or 2 for some buffs, but Melee Eye, Spam Pierce, and just try and like kill the bosses with, focus down the bosses with the Melee Eye debuff and bunch of Pierce damage. Does it tend to work? Not really. I mean, you'd much rather just have magic damage, but, you know, if it's the option, it's the option. You can see we have a couple of Hades, we have a Death Dragon up to TS, which is decent debuff. Then, yeah, it's going to be between like Bronzebeards, and you could think about one ship, but in this setup, I don't really like the ship. So what are you going to do with the boss? Pull it into your backline and then kill it with Elite Archers? Yeah, probably not the go with his setup. Interesting Zerker out the front. Guess it's just meant to tank everything and proc its immunity early. It's kind of interesting. I wonder if it's good or not. Not sure. Yeah. So to his credit, Rummy did like recognize the issue he had with the lack of damage, rerolled, and proceeded to not find damage. So yeah, I mean, best piece of advice there is just get good, right? You can see no leak on 18 now, but if we just look at the wood, it's pretty fine for Sen 20 in the not super fat game with multiple lanes that are quite weak. Like teal is very weak, pink is very weak specifically in terms of value and like actual ability to kill bosses on 20. And, you know, presumably unbeknownst to West again, it's just like Rummy is aggressively lacking damage. I mean, he's going turrets. I guess he's just thinking like, well, maybe I just build verse 21 because I have nothing verse 20. I don't know if that's the thought process, but it's like I can understand it. Anyway, both teams sending 20. Then we're going to watch Blue's lane on 20. And we'll talk about that a little bit. So obviously coming to the end of the game, so spoiler alert, the game does indeed end on 20 to this send. Or to these sends, rather. So, well, what we'll do is we'll speed sort of to the end of the build phase, and then we'll talk about each build real quick, and we'll just go through them. Okay, so pink, I mean, it doesn't really matter, it just has some harpies and like a ghost and bronze bid. It's like 3 tox will kill the mass, and then ghost will do some damage, just whatever. I mean, it's like berserkers, butchers, fine. Like upgraded the lifesteal. There's no small lifesteal, which is interesting. Pirate of Truth, like fair enough. But again, it's just like there is no damage. And as I said, he re-rolled, presumably looking for damage, and proceeded to not find damage. Got yellow, which is like bunch of druids. I probably would have gone one more PD if I was him, just to get a little bit more frontline. But the first PD is the most important for that attack debuff, so it's understandable. You can see double Ascendant. This is actually really good. So if you look at how the Ascendants are split, right? The idea is if you have a couple of turtles, like one ends up sort of here, one ends up sort of here, or whatever, you have like the druids out to this side, focus this turtle, the druids this side, focus this turtle, means there'll be an Ascendant on both of those bosses, right? If you get like the dream focus and there's like one turtle ahead of the others and everything hits that anyway, then it doesn't fucking matter, because with good value, good units, you're going mid, right? But these, the split up Ascendants just help take care of that like quote unquote worst case scenario where your focus splits. So that's quite good, it's sensible placement. Because obviously it's like there's just not enough space to build vertical druids all stacked on one side or the other. You'd just run out of space. Even though you would prefer to do that if you had the option. Anyway, orange bunch of Thunderbirds. He had really like quite low lumber, so I guess I can understand, and like wanting to juice here as well. I guess I can understand not wanting to reroll 100, but still, I just feel like Thunderbird is bad on 20. I like Thunderbird, but I think it's bad unit on 20. Anyway, teal, again, doesn't really matter what he builds, just like one Phoenix and Berserkers, whatever. Like, he can't kill anything, so it doesn't really matter. Talked already about purple. He's got the Defiler, which is pretty fun. Then he has snipers, which have range buffed, not themselves. So let's try and find what they've range buffed. Not the Ghost. Not the Hades. Did they range buff the Odins then? Yeah, range buff the Odins. So 400 range Odins. I guess he's looking for a second cast. I don't know how realistic that is on 20, considering that even though he range buffed them, there isn't much that will actually go in front of them and tank. So I don't know. I probably would have just range buffing the Ghost can be really bad though, if it's because it can mean it just sits outside the aura. So I guess it's fine. This isn't really anything like, I don't know. I just feel like second cast is optimistic on 20. But yeah, next up is red. More or less what I talked about. Did a Wind Rider, which I would have stayed away from. I would prefer to just do like another Wyvern, because Wind Rider's gonna like the poison's okay. I believe it's just a damage effect though, and not like any kind of debuff. So I would probably have just gotten like 2 Wyverns instead of 1 Wind Rider to just try and abuse this melee a bit more with the single target, rather than the Wind Rider throwing spears at like 50 different things. But it's like, it's pretty minor. But yeah, I would have done just Wyverns or more Blacksmiths instead of Wind Riders. Then we have blue. So going for stacked up Wolverines. So I criticized his placement earlier with the alphas, but with the Wolverines it's really, really good placement. So you can see they're all stacked to one side behind the front line, and this is exactly what you want, right? Because unlike every other level up to this point, Wolverine does not one-shot 20 with a crit, right? It doesn't one-shot the turtles. It does a shitload of damage. Like, it still does that 3,000 whatever it is damage. But it doesn't one-shot the turtles, right? So what you do want to do is exactly this. You want to stack them all on one side so they're not the first things to get targeted, so they're not the first things to die. And try and get a lot of them attacking one boss, because it's the same deal as 10. If you kill one of those bosses early, you then reduce the DPS of the wave by like 33% if we discount the sends, and maybe like 25% if we include the sends, depending how big the send is, of course, but you know, whatever, semantics. But if we just kill off one boss with crits really quickly, we reduce so much damage in the wave. So that's why we want to stack all our Wolverines in the same sort of area over to either the left or the right of the line. In this case, obviously, there's only space to this left-hand side, so stack them all over there and try and just burn down one boss very quickly. So there's perfect placement with that. And then just, you know, highball maturity had for support, and then the uptime meter, which again makes sense just as a debuff tool. But yeah, let's have a look at, we're going to watch Blitz because, you know, Wolverine is fun, and spoiler alert, there are a bunch of fucking pings here, so like, get ready for that. So Wolverines all move forward, and just watch the HP of the Maka as this just starts to disappear. Right? You can see 2200 crit from the Wolverine. Wolverine walks up and crits the fucking demon, and just look at the chunks of HP flying off the boss when the Wolverines get their crits. So that's exactly what that placement does, so very nice job to Blue there with that placement. And this, from Purple, will be about the only time you ever see fucking 4 Elite Archers killing a turtle, which is pretty funny. But he had just enough, didn't see his focus, maybe it was good. But we can see here, Yellow goes mid, nice job Yellow. Orange goes mid, they both barely make it mid, but they make it mid, right? These are the bosses leaked from Pink because they're leaked super quickly, and dun. 3 bosses from Old Mate Rummy because he has no fucking damage. He has none. So, East has 1 more heal. East has 2 mids. West has 2 mids with 1 less heal, but Red did a good amount of damage, and this boss is really low. And that's a lot in mid, so first boss gets killed, second gets crit, another crit, and West kills everything with the Wolverines mid on 20. So, everyone complaining about Wolverines on 10, time to start complaining about Wolverines on 20 instead. And you can see, yeah, East is going to die slow and painful, they're just like too many turtles. And yeah, it's just too hard to kill them all with the king. They're really close with 2 mids. You know, they definitely could have survived, and it ended up just coming down to like bad rerolls on Rum, just not finding damage. If he finds damage, they never die. Like, watch how close this is. He could have easily killed 2 bosses, and they don't. And then East doesn't die. But you know, it's the nature of the game. It's just you can blame RNG for you getting, or just not rolling damage, or you can blame Red Rum for being bad. I'm going to choose option number 2, but of course you can, both are reasonable, although I think secretly we all know that option number 2 in that situation is very much correct. But yeah, that's the last and defining game of the season, so hope you guys enjoyed that. Again, cheers to the guys Virus and Law, I believe, that recommended, you know, I watched this and sort of commentate it, talk about it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. So yeah, you know, do the whole like, subscribe, all of that. As always, thank you to my patrons. You guys are legends. Hope you guys enjoyed the sort of return to the learning from observation, which I guess this is essentially what it was. And yeah, cheers guys. Catch you in the next one.